We're super excited. And of course, we want to thank those who sponsored this event, the Center for Africana Studies, the Department of English, and the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Center. So without their time, their money, their labor, and their input, this event, or these events rather, wouldn't be possible. So we are very appreciative of them all. And so of course, we want to thank you all for coming out to join us tonight. We're going to go ahead and get started. Feel free to use the chat for questions. We'll have about a couple, I'll have some questions for our roundtable panelists, and then we'll open the floor. This event is being recorded for those who could not attend. Dr. Kendra R. Parker, one of our panelists, is Dr. Wayne. She is in the Department of English and in World Languages. We've got Dr. Conkle. She's in the Department of English. She's a film studies scholar. And she teaches on Marilyn Monroe and other things. Then we've got Dr. Joyce White, the director of the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Center, who's got a book out on rituals, and she also does Black mermaids. And again, I'm Dr. Parker, and I teach a course on Black vampires and Octavia E. Butler. So panelists, what is your favorite scene from the movie, or what was your reaction when you first saw the movie? Oh, don't be shy.
Okay, I'll go. Let me see. Favorite scene of the movie, the whole movie. But particularly, I think most people will say this. I have two favorite scenes, so I'm gonna cheat a little bit. I'll say in the Club Juke when Sammy is playing and everything just begins to open up, that that scene where all the music from the past, present, and future is all infused and working together, and just having this sort of call and response moment. That is my favorite. And then that ending scene with Smoke and Annie and their baby as he's transitioning over, those two scenes for me just absolutely encapsulate the beauty and the magic of the film itself. And my first initial response, I remember watching the movie for the first time, and I grabbed my husband Johnny and said, at that scene at Club Juke, and said, I have to watch this again. We're in the middle of the movie, and I just already knew I need to see this again, because it was that moment that just, when everything opened up, I'm like, oh my God, I know I've missed so much at this point, and I have to see all this richness. So that was it for me.
Absolutely. And that scene we've heard over the couple of nights that that's a lot of people's favorite scene. So you're definitely not alone.
I can follow Dr. White. I am really bad at picking favorites. I can't do it. So I won't pick a favorite, but I will say that my response initially was sort of similar in that I was like, okay, I have a lot of questions. It's just because it's such a dense movie that I was like, okay, I want to watch this again so that I can start to think more about some of the connections that are being made in the film. And then I will say that last night's screening pointed out to me how humorous the movie was. Like the audience that I watched it with in the theater wasn't really laughing that much, but seeing it with students was definitely a completely different experience, and that was really fun.
I agree. Watching it with people, I thought the movie was funny in places, but I think watching it with students who are goofy in so many ways um, made it 10 times funnier. Dr. Wayne.
And I definitely agree that the film is funny. And one of my favorite scenes is actually when they were trying to see who turned into a vampire, and they had to eat a clove of garlic, and then Delta Slim was just acting up. Even if I saw the movie 3 times, that scene just always gets me and just laughing. So it's definitely one of my favorites because it just showed, like, even in that tense moment, it was like a nice moment. And I do have, yes, like definitely the juke scene, just extraordinary watching it. I was trying to see, do I recognize the music, the dances, the people, and all those different things. So I really enjoyed that as well.
Same. It's a really good scene. And since y'all have already said it, I won't. I think after that one, another favorite scene I have would be the one where Delta Slim, Stack, and Sammy are in the car, and they pass by the chain gang. And I love the diegetic and non-diegetic sound, meaning the sound that's in the movie that only the characters can hear, but then the sound that we can hear with his friend Rice being lynched. Just thinking through the violence of that. And it was just so good. And it's throughout the film, all those moments where even when Grace, she can hear him in her head and the sound is muffled, even though the amplified music is in the background, we can hear it muffled as if we're in her head. I love those. And I think it's really great. And I actually think that this is where I want to start with Dr. Conkle in terms of film techniques. So this movie is just, I mean, I do film a little bit, but Dr. Conkle does film, film, film. And so could you talk us through some of the film techniques, anything
Yeah.
related to the structure of the film?
Yeah, so definitely the sound design is really impactful, and just the way that different musical cues appear throughout the film is really powerful. But the thing that I think has struck me the most on rewatching the film is the editing techniques. And the second time I watched it, I sort of thought, oh, well, this is kind of like a music video. And a lot of the music scenes, it's really fast-paced editing. Um, and I think maybe there is some of that aesthetic when we have a lot of quick editing movements. But I also think there's a lot of cross-cutting, cutting between scenes happening at different places. And the technique is meant to indicate to us that this is happening at the same time. And I think that really is a moment where each time that happens, that underscores the way the form and the structure of the film kind of mirrors that content, that there are multiple worlds coexisting. So sometimes this cross-cutting happens in kind of flashbacks, but we don't have a sustained flashback. We'll cut away from it and then cut back to it. But sometimes it's between what are the vampires doing and what are the people in the juke doing. And that's kind of suggesting these worlds coexisting in a way that's kind of less, um, I guess ostentatious as the juke scene where everyone's dancing together. But that still kind of keeps that messaging of these are worlds coexisting at the same time together. And we see that also with like past and present being edited together and maybe even some future in there. And so I was really struck by the way those editing techniques mirror that messaging of like these are not separate worlds, these are not separate times and experiences of time. They're really woven together.
Oh, and so I love that because of course, I'm thinking about the stomping scene where Pearline is singing Pale, Pale Moon and she's stomping and they're stomping and other people. But I think the opening scene where, Sammy walks into the church and then his dad is preaching and then we get this, I mean, is that a crosscut? Because it's very jolting and jarring because then we get the vampire and it's meant to be a jump scare, but it's also, is that a similar technique?
Yeah, so I think we get kind of the film also does a lot with subjective point of view, right? Where we're seeing like what individual characters are seeing, kind of similar to that sound design, right? Where we're hearing Slim's memory of the lynching. I think there are also moments where we're seeing someone's interior experience. And so definitely we have flashbacks cut in there at the beginning, but we move back and forth between those times very quickly in that sequence. So it's a little harder to get the effect of a sustained cross-cutting. But once you've seen the whole thing, then you can go back and appreciate more what that's doing in that scene as well. And then brings up these parallels between, well, what is the devil in this world?
No, absolutely. And I think that's probably going to be a question because I know some students had that later, like who is the devil, especially in that opening scene. And so I love how sound design, but cross-cutting also helps us think through some of these questions, not just in terms of what people are saying, but how the sound design contributes to helping us think through and ask those questions. So I love that. And so thinking, I don't know, I guess to shift to Dr. White, because these are some questions people had we didn't really get to talk about, but Dr. White does rituals. I mean, she does a lot of things, but one of her specialties is rituals. And we were briefly having a conversation about the ring shout and the sort of blending of worlds that are coexisting and colliding. So could you tell us what a ring shout is, explain why it's important, and then where you see it in sinners and why that should matter to us?
Okay.
Right.
let me let me do it all. All right. So just to give a brief overview of a ring shout, our most present example that we have the ring shout are Gullah Geechee people today who still do a ring shout. But this was a cultural retention that was brought over by Central and West African people who come over, obviously, to the Americas as enslaved people, right? And so the ring shout is a spiritual ritual where you have typically the way that it's done, at least in America, is 4 people that represent 4 points. And some people 4 points of the wind or, the crosswinds. But I really believe, and I'm sure about this, that it really is the 4 points of the sun. So the idea of high noon, the idea of, dusk and dawn, and the idea of midnight, right? Like nighttime when, the moon is out, but the sun isn't, so it's disappeared. And those 4 points, when we think about them, are direct representations of the Congo cosmogram. And the reason why I think that the ring shout in the Congo cosmogram, which is the idea, the philosophy, it's a sign, it's a symbol. It's the idea of philosophy of how somebody moves through life. A person who's lived well moves through life. That they die, that they're rebirth, that they live life, and then they have high consciousness and they exist with the divine, right? And so it moves in a counterclockwise motion, and so does the ring shout. These 4 people are moving in a counterclockwise motion, never crossing their feet. And it's meant to definitely coexist, right, with the ancestral world, to invite the spirit in, to invite the ancestors in so that they're commingling. That scene, when we see Rennick and then all of his new converts outside of Club Juke, and they're in a circle. And what's funny is, I think when Dr. Parker and I were talking about this today, it kind of dawned on me. I was like, oh yeah, that is a ring shout of sorts, especially because think about the people that they're actually focusing on in the camera, right? So it's Cornbread, you see him first, like he's jigging it out. He's dancing and they're moving in a certain way, right? And so you have really a couple of circles. So they're in like the main sort of interior circle, but there's another circle beyond them. And so it's kind of, I think, representative of how that culture now is merged, because the vampires, they've taken the stories, they've taken the rituals, they've taken all of it, and so now we have this ring shout that's bringing together all these worlds, but also the culture as well. And so it is a sort of intercession of spirit and in the physical realm, that's also maybe representative of, and I haven't thought this all the way out, y'all, so go with me, also representative maybe of this idea of the vampires in the physical realm as well. Like they're dead, but they're not, sort of, they're a lot, they're in the physical realm that we could see them. It's not like a ghost where we kind of see them sometimes and maybe not, but so they are a sort of physical part, but also dead. So anyway, all that to say that I think that it's genius, and it's absolutely a beautiful illustration in the middle of this. And it's just something that didn't dawn on me until like my 3.5 time seeing this. Perhaps that's actually what it is. And the way that they're moving and the syncopated rhythm that they're moving in is very indicative of the ring shout itself. So it was really interesting. Singing a song at the same time, having that sort of beat, the downbeat, which was used to be done by a drums being prohibited. It was done by a stick or, some sort of clapping. So all of that is really indicative of that. I hope that was a very long answer to something that may have been more simplified, but I hope that answers your question.
Oh no, I think that was very helpful. I see some people nodding, so that was very helpful and useful. And I love that you said drum because it actually segues perfectly into what I want to ask Dr. Wayne. First of all, y'all need to know that Dr. Wayne, while she said that the scene with Pearline was her favorite scene, what she didn't say is that I asked her, I said, what did you react? She said she went out to buy a bunch of garlic. She was like, maybe I should buy some garlic. But she also said, as she was watching it, she said, maybe I should get rid of my talking drum. And so could you tell us what is the talking drum and why it's important? And why did you, after watching this movie, say, maybe I should get rid of mine?
Yes, I went to Costco and I got a bunch of garlic cloves. So yeah. I like horror movies. I don't do horror movies. And then with the vampires and all of that, that's not really something that I'll be watching just for fun. And I have one of my students here. She was one of the people who would, oh, you have to see the movie. It's not that scary. Well, thank you. It was scary. But after I was watching it, and the scene that sort of like stuck to me the first time that I saw it was obviously when Remick went all vampire monster with his long fingernails and everything. So that stuck with me. And when Sammy hit him on the head with the guitar, I was like, that's it. He's done. The guitar is magic. That's really what I thought. And they revealed that the guitar didn't have any connections to Charlie Patton's, and I was like devastated a little bit and disappointed that the magic. I was thinking about the whole lineage thing going on, but that wasn't happening. But I was really at that point thinking about the guitar in the whole movie, like, and its importance and its symbolism. And that just brought me to thinking about it maybe as a curse or as a blessing. And one thing that I'm Senegalese, I'm from Senegal. And in Senegal, we do believe in the power of songs and music. And I have an instrument called the talking drum. It's a small drum with that when you hit it, it almost sounds like a voice, like human, a little bit. And it is when you play it almost in tandem, in which like the drums are actually talking to each other. And we use the talking drum often for like wedding ceremonies or just in popular music and things of that nature. So I have a talking drum and I immediately thought about it. And I was like, I don't play with it too much. It's just for decor mostly. But I was just immediately thinking about me playing it with my son, and maybe we are summoning something or someone, or, that we don't know. And that's really what got to me, the symbolism of that guitar, and how at the beginning we would think about it being connected to some music lineage, and also the sort of like almost representation of Sammy as a griot also resonated with me. And that's immediately where my mind went. It was just like what am I doing with these talking drums that I have at home? So it was really the cultural charge or the cultural significance of the instrument in itself.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Conkle.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in to share something else since we're talking about instruments that came up at the Lit Film Conference. A presenter who is doing their dissertation on the banjo actually talked about the history of the banjo, but the thing that stuck with me, she connected it to these sayings on kind of folk musicians, guitars. So like Pete Seeger on his banjo put the saying, this machine surrounds hate and forces it to surrender. And Woody Guthrie's guitar was inscribed with "This machine kills fascists," and so then I started thinking about the idea of these instruments as instruments of resistance as well, right? And especially thinking about like in our current moment, how do we resist without militarizing, and the idea of music as a form of resistance and a form of community building, I thought was a really powerful connection.
Oh, and this is, oh, I saw Dr. White. I was going to say, this is so great because when I saw the movie, I was just like, oh, his guitar is a freedom technology. And so Isaiah Lavender defines in his 2019 book, he defines a freedom technology as any practical knowledge that helps Black people solve problems within their environment, in their society, and that helps them escape from physical and or psychological bondage, which allows them control of their own actions. And so for me, Sammy, he's like, look, I've been working all week, Pop. I got my quota done. I just want to enjoy myself for one night. I'll be back in time for service in the morning. And so it's a freedom technology, freedom from the drudgery, the backbreaking labor of sharecropping, which is just wage slavery, right? It's just slavery by another name. And he's looking for this freedom technology. And not only does he unlock it for himself and everyone in the juke joint, but then, he has past, present, and future colliding. And I love thinking about the juke joint as a revival space, right? And so when we think of revival, we think about church, but I mean, it's a church ceremony. Stack says, y'all want to sweat till y'all stank. Well, when you go to certain charismatic Black churches, they be sweating till they stanking because they're doing all this dancing, this praising. And so I really want to sort of think through the juke joint as a sort of church/revival space, especially thinking through that freedom technology. Because he really does, he calls past, present, and future through that, through what Isaiah Lavender would call a networked Black consciousness, which is more than just community, but it's tapping into the communal memories and traditions of people, which is where you see all of these groups appear in that juke joint scene. Dr. White, I saw your hand.
Well, you kind of took up some of the things I was going to say, but that's okay. Like you said it so much more eloquently than I would. But I'd add that scene too, the scene that you talked about on the where we see the chain gang, and then we see Delta Slim as he finishes telling the story, and we kind of hear the background of what's happening to his friend Rice as he's being lynched. He uses that humming not only as a source of and we're in the midst of cotton fields and chain gangs and all these representative spaces of bondage, and so he uses that one to free himself, I think, of the memory, but then also I thought about the healing quality of that as well, like the idea of what people did on the plantation to really build each other up, to be able to heal each other in the midst of pain, in the midst of bondage, and all that technology. And so it's there, like, it is this source of freedom, but it's also the sense of healing and, in your own divine power, right? And the ability to be able to do that through music. And so I love what Dr. Conkle said, this idea of what can we do in moments, right, where we don't want to militarize, but we need to heal our own consciousness, to fortify each other, but then also to have that sort of fire in us to keep going and to fight the good fight, right? So that's all. That's all I'm gonna.
So it sounds like we need a balance of being able to rest and restore so we can go out and fight the good fight in whatever way that looks like.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
also be able to communicate things that you might not be able to say through words. And I think that, Delta Slim gets to a point where there's nothing else he can say.
Yeah, he
The
just
pain is so deep.
slaps
That's
his
it.
hand. Yeah.
Right. And then, here goes Stack, like, you don't hear him, like you don't have
Got
your
that
guitar
guitar in your
back there. You better get to playing too. Like, this is communal. This is something that we do together. So yeah.
Yeah, taking on that shared burden. Absolutely. Well, since we're talking about violence, I've only got one more question for y'all. When you think about the violence in the movie, and I mean any form of violence, we talked about Delta Slim, we sort of see the violence in some ways, it's sort of set in a peaceful, serene setting. But I mean, there's also the setting in some ways is also very violent. Like you just said, Dr. White, they're riding through cotton fields. And so we see the chain gang where they're, another form of the earlier form of mass incarceration, where you are picked up for vagrancy on the road and you're chained together and you're forced into a different form of slave labor. Instead of sharecropping for maybe some wages, now you're laboring on the side of the road. And so we see that's violent, but then the setting is, the scene is also sort of violent. The juke joint itself, we learn, although I think we kind of know at the beginning, but we learn later. So do y'all have any thoughts about the different forms of violence in the movie that may have resonated with you, whether it's, yeah, I'll stop there. And maybe it's just me.
I
Well, I
think,
think, oh,
go ahead.
Nope.
I think from the perspective of someone who studies film, a lot of the violence is kind of direct allusions to other kinds of violence, and I'm not sure what to do with this particular example, but this really struck me at yesterday's screening. The way that Smoke kills Hogwood at the very end, the very last time he shoots him with a machine gun, is very much like the ending of the 1967 Bonnie and Clyde, which at the time people were like, "Why is this film so violent? This is senseless, sensational violence just to appeal to the young people." And of course, we're in a completely different place now with violence on the screen. But in that movie, the kind of rebels, Bonnie and Clyde, were brutally gunned down in this sensational manner. And so there does seem to be, to me, there seems to be this direct allusion to film history, but then also this reversal of that kind of, I don't want to say gratuitous, but this kind of sensationalized violence at the end. But then it's much more satisfying in Sinners than it is in Bonnie and Clyde.
And the students in Statesboro cheered at the end when that happens. When he was like, when he says, I've got money," and he starts shooting, and they were like, "Yay," just erupted into cheers because, you call the guy the N-word and you're already dying. He just asked for a cigarette. And I'm just like, he's standing here with a gun over you. That's really what you wanted to say at this moment? Like, just the level, that sort of violence. I think about them calling them boys earlier, the disrespect of being late. We don't think about being late as violent. And I'm not saying that if you're late, that's violent. But I think in that context, Hogwood showing up late was intended to intimidate, dehumanize, and in that way, it is a sort of violence.
Another like other parts of violence, like I think it's throughout the film, like that sort of dichotomy in between violence, and then you would see like for example, for the vampires, you would see how violent they are, and then so polite also, like, and almost cheerful. You would see like that clear dichotomy in which, like, one moment they're like, "Oh, come on, this is love and fellowship and whatnot," and then they will just run and grab your neck, and you would see the gore with all the blood, like just getting out that way. So that's and also like at different moments of like sacrifice, in which you have there to Slim like sacrificing himself. And I mean, I thought that it was unnecessary for him to like cut himself to attract the vampires. What is the purpose behind it? That gets you anyways. But also another moment of sacrifice for Miss Annie, and when Smoke killed her, and it was tender, and you knew it was all about love, but also when you're looking at the screen, you see how gory it was, like the blood just sputtering everywhere, and they just stayed on that scene, like showing her dead. So in terms of violence, I thought that there was always a dichotomy in which you would have like hardcore, gory violence associated with something that is a little bit more tender, a little bit more, tender, I would say.
And such jarring scenes too. Like, I mean, we're talking about the violence, but like you said, there are so many tender moments unconnected to violence in the movie that I think are also worth exploring. But yeah, I very Quentin Tarantino is what I said last night. The way the violence, I was like, ooh. I mean, and I like horror movies, but I said, oh my goodness.
I don't like horror movies, but and Dr. Parker had to convince me to see this. But I also think that there are quiet spots of violence there too, like the church. Sammy's father is violently trying to get him to go one course and to go one way, right? And telling him like you're going to invite the devil in and you're going to do like so. I think there are other quiet moments where, and just little subtle moments. I think also like how we're like spitting on the ground and like these very degrading spaces that we might not see as violence. That I think Dr. Wayne brings up a good point, like how polite the vampires are. Like, if you'll just invite me in, like everything will be great. We're gonna fellowship. We're gonna do all these great things. But I think what strikes me the most, and I think that's a part of the scenery, is the scenery is quiet, but it's violent. Because it really does harken back to, well, not even harken back. It's really, kind of talking about what's happening there. It's beautiful. Cotton fields are beautiful. They can be, but they're ugly, ugly spots and sites of history when we talk about bondage and violence towards particularly Black bodies. So I think it's those, for me, it was those quiet spots that speak more volume than the blood. Like I got over the vampires, and that is very odd for me to say. I got over the blood and the gore and the guts. So it was like it's other spots that really, especially as a Southerner, that really hit me. It's the same way I kind of feel driving by, the cotton fields going into campus in Statesboro. It's the same way I feel about it every day, but well, not every day, Tuesdays and Thursdays, but it's the same sort of thing, but it's the harkening back. And I love the way they're shot because it really is both what is happening at that time, but the history of it all as well. So, yeah.
And it is jarring to see those cotton fields driving into campus. I saw them the other day on Tuesday. I was like I know they're there, but I don't drive up there often. I was like, oh, well, there you go. So it's 7:04. Do you all in the audience, do you have any questions for us? If you do, you can pop them in the chat or use the Q&A feature, or you can unmute. I think you might want to raise your virtual hand just so we can see you and unmute. We are being recorded. But if you have questions, otherwise I've got other things to pull out my head, but we definitely want to give you all a chance to converse. Any questions for us? That while they're thinking, one of the things I think we should probably talk about that's sort of come up is the role of Annie, right? So Annie's role in the movie. One of the things I love is how they defer to her, they listen to her. Yes, Stack and Cornbread, once they turn into vampires, they sort of, derisively call her a witch and all those other things, but they really do listen to her. So what are your thoughts about Annie? Because I love her as this beautiful love interest, and as the sort of one who has the insider knowledge that people listen to.
I sort of wanted her to become a vampire so she could live on. And just like for her, if I had to choose between Mary and Stack becoming vampires and Smoke and Annie becoming vampires, I was rooting for Smoke and Annie to become vampires. But one thing that I didn't notice, like the first time that I watched the film, was that the mojo bag is what saved Smoke at the end. When his brother was trying to bite him, he couldn't because of the mojo bag, and I didn't notice it like the first time. I was just horrified that a vampire was on the screen, but it just made me think about the power of the hoodoo and how it was represented in the film, in which like it worked in certain aspects that we could witness, And it didn't work when, for example, they were talking about their baby or on herself, like it didn't save her. So I thought that that was an interesting way of like showing the meaning of hoodoo and the ways in which it is like a little bit more nuanced than it worked or it didn't work. We were witnessing like moments in which it clearly worked, and other moments where she couldn't use it for herself, or she couldn't use it to save her baby. So
No, absolutely. I don't think she would have been happy as a vampire. But I feel you, like if we had to pick, but I don't think she'd be happy, but yeah, but she
Well,
was.
but we have to think about what vampires do, what they wanted though. And so that's why they wanted her. Remember, Stack says, Mary has a fit when, like they were coming for her because they wanted her power. They wanted her understanding of what she knew. So she couldn't have gone. Like that's why she said, just take me out, kill me. Absolutely not. Like take me out before all of that. I mean, and she's done, and it is the conjuring that saves her in the first place. Because when she, Smoke looks over at the table, and she's done it on the gambling table. She's put out, like she's kind of read the cards, so to speak, and she knows that her time is coming, right? And that if this happens, just it's going to happen. But I also think that Dr. Wayne brings up that beautiful part. I think Annie is my favorite character. I think her representation is beautiful for so many reasons. We talked about a lot about this, Dr. Parker and I, with the first group at Statesboro, and the fact that she just isn't what you would typically see as a love interest. And so that alone for me, I think is such a triumph. And she is so beautifully rich and divine and powerful and feminine and gorgeous, and all of these things that people do not necessarily assess or give to Black women who are darker skinned, fuller figured, and who are powerful in their own right, and so I think that the beauty of her character lies in all of just really the whole gamut of it. And so what she represents to me is just divineness. I mean, she is the one. She is the one that knows everything. And she's the one that gives them, sort of even the power that they need to fight off and to ward off until Grace screams, but we don't have to talk about that and lets them all in. But but that's I'm still trying to forgive Grace. I'm angry at Grace.
I mean, we know she was
I
thinking about
understand.
her daughter, and they were all in her
I'm
head.
still angry.
Yeah, we can understand her and still be like, yeah, but there had to be one, and so you know. So there are some questions, but I want to read this comment first from Catherine. It says, the connection I feel with the just invite me in is that fake kind, which is how so many of us have been manipulated to believe those who are really evil inside, and they convince others that they are not, to go against the grain and choose to not be the many. Yeah, it is this sort of, like Dr. Wayne was saying, this veneer of civility, like loving kindness. And then like, after we kill y'all, it's gonna be all right. It's not, ain't no pain. What do you mean ain't no pain? Yes, there's plenty of pain. Um, there's a question. Emma wants us to talk specifically about the music scenes. She really liked the contrast of Pick Poor Robin Clean and Sammy's I Lied to You. Um, I could take it if anybody want to take it? Me? Okay. That one, so what's so interesting about Pick Poor Robin Clean, and we were actually talking about this on Tuesday night, Megan Bowen was sort of making sure that we were aware that, the synchronized portion of Pick Poor Robin Clean, especially when they first show up with the banjos, it's actually not, it's not blues music because it's very synchronized, and blues and jazz are all about improvisation. And so we were talking about how it's we already know there's something wrong, but it's another way we can see that they're not like us because they're doing all these very synchronized non-call and response movements as they're at the door singing Pick Poor Robin Clean. Whereas in contrast, you've got Sammy's I Lied to You. They're keeping time and doing all these other things, but everybody is literally doing their own thing in the juke joint in the present. And then, of course, in the past and the future as well, this sort of invitational, communal call, literal call, he's calling, and these spirits present, past, and future are responding. And so that's what I think there. And then, of course, the pick, pour, rob, and clean after they've all been turned. Um, oh, it sounds like a funeral march. It's just so somber and ominous. Um, mm-mm. And it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be. And of course, pick, pour, rob, and clean. Yeah, it's about death. Um, so it's a really good contrast. Um, yeah. Anybody else want to add to that?
Something I noticed last night that I hadn't noticed before was when Rennick shows up at their house, there are 3 vultures outside.
Yes.
And so I was like, oh my God, it totally went over my head the first 2 times that I watched it. So even this idea of picking poor Robin clean, like it's vulture-like, right? You know, that
Yeah.
idea of like picking through the body. Yeah. Ugh.
The fact that he's going to pick through their bodies,
Right.
right? Like death is
Nasty.
literally coming to your house, and then
Yeah.
the 3 of you are going to
Yeah.
be death that comes everywhere else. Yes. Let's see, Chelsea. Hey, Chelsea. Chelsea's in my class. She said, and actually one of my former students asked, would I be using centers for material in my Black Vampires class? And the answer is yes, we're doing it now, reading, learning about it this week. So yes. But Chelsea says, if you all had to choose, what characters do you resonate with or enjoy? Well, we know Dr. White likes Annie. Oh, I'm like Dr. Conkle when I asked him to pick a favorite scene. I like I like them all, even Grace. Um, I'm gonna pass for now. Anybody like any of the panelists have a favorite character? I know you do, Dr. White. You've already said Annie.
I mean, I like all it's very hard. It's very hard. So I'm just gonna stick with Annie and be quiet because I've talked enough today.
Well, I guess I will say Delta Slim is after rewatching it with people the past couple of days. Um, he's like, I ain't drunk right now. Like, yes, he's humorous, but very, very serious. And he told Sammy twice, he was like, if the devil come for you tonight, he gonna have to get through old Delta Slim. And, you know, I think he wanted himself to be that sort of sacrificial lamb, but he was like, mm-mm. He was really saying, when Stack was turned, talking to Smoke in there at the door, he was like, the Stack I know, wouldn't be taking no orders from this man. And, Stack shuts him up kindly, and he said, ooh. But he really was like, he's humorous, but also he does bring sort of a gravitas and a weight to the story that I think is really, really important. And so it's easy to write him off as an old drunk and write him off as just comedic relief. And I think he's more than that. Um, and so I think after watching it with students the past 2 nights, and just seeing their reaction to him, the claps, the cheers, all of that, makes me want to think about him more. I, of course, have a soft spot for Sammy. I love his voice. And then I love a good coming of age story of Bildungsroman. I think it's really important to, chart your own path. And he refuses his dad's way of life and Smoke. Smoke tells him, Smoke says, if I ever hear about you touching this, I'm gonna kill you. And he was like, you might as well kill me now. And Smoke is like, you just gave me an order. I was like, oh wow. But Sammy in his mind is willing to die for this. I don't know if he was willing to die for it in reality, but he chooses his own path and he's like, no, this is what I want to do. He charts and follows his own destiny.
I also really liked Delta Slim. I think throughout the movie, he's been the one that, and that came after watching it like 3 times, when I would really listen to what he would say and pay attention to him whenever he would come on screen. But also, I think I have a soft spot for Smoke. Just the ways in which he would talk about his love, like how his love for Annie, his love for his child, his love for his brother. It just, yeah, I have a soft spot for him, I would say.
Absolutely. Let's see, I'm checking through the chat. Lots of commentary. Catherine. Dr. Conkle said she looked up the history of Pick Poor Robin Clean, and yes, it was recorded first by Gishi Wali. And so this idea of the song being appropriated, which we really see throughout. I mean, Dr. Conkle, you started us off talking about this cross-cutting, showing how these worlds are colliding, and in some ways a forced collision, right? And this sort of trying to absorb, to suck the life out of the history, the memories, the traditions of a people, because of what Rimek had gone through himself.
Nobody has talked about Mary, and I'm kind of curious what other people think about her. I think I have kind of conflicted feelings, but sometimes it seems to me like it makes sense what Dr. White said about trying to, steal Annie's hoodoo powers. But I also thought, well, maybe she just wanted them all to be together forever. Maybe that's like naive and gullible. I have a really hard time anticipating when people have ulterior motives. So that's a personal failing. But I don't know. Yeah, she then came in and killed them all and celebrated it, but she did want to be with them forever also. I don't know.
No, and I do think that there is that part of her. She's the tragic mulatto figure. And so the tragic mulatto figure in African American literature, as they're depicted, they're torn between two worlds, but they've often chosen the white world for whatever reason, right? Chosen or forced to choose. Stack is like, go here, but she wanted him, and you have to live this double life. But one of the things that happens is you always want to come back to that community. The difficulty is once you've crossed over, passed to the other side, it's really hard to go back, because you run the risk of exposure, not of just of yourself, but all the people who know about you, which is one of the reasons, they really didn't want to let the singers in initially, because they were just like, no, if something happens, we're in trouble. What if somebody sees you here? And so I think that's part of it. I do think that she missed them, and her mom had just passed away, and she was really upset with Smoke and Stack. She's like, you didn't come to her repast, you didn't come to her funeral, you didn't do any of this. I guess you just used her up. And she really just felt at home there. She tells Stack, she's like, I don't want to be white. I wanted you. And so she's sort of in this hard place. I think it's really interesting that she uses her white skin privilege. She was like, they'll tell me more than they'll tell you. She's very aware of what her white skin does. Um, Unfortunately, I don't think it's. I think it's her desire to please Stack, and the need to get money. I think that ends up being her downfall, and then ultimately everyone else's downfall, because she becomes that, not the weak link, but she becomes the key, in the same way that Sammy's guitar and his voice are the key. Mary becomes the key to to help it unravel from the inside out. And that's, I think, another thing that's connected to the tragic mulatto. It's like, can you really trust them? Sometimes they're going to be the undoing of the family or the group, and they're responsible for the downfall, and ultimately sometimes their own downfall too. Rebecca Yang asks, are there any aspects in Sinners that accurately portrays life in the 1930s? All of it. I mean, except the vampires, but
Or maybe.
I mean, listen, we don't know. Are you looking for something specific? Like, one thing would be like the street, right? Segregated streets, segregated shops, and the Chinese could cross over and cross. But I mean, the cotton fields, the existence of the Klan, sharecropping, wage slavery, chain gangs, um, theft, you
Yeah,
know,
Al
it's,
Capone.
yeah, Al Capone, the feud between the Irish and the Italians, all of that, Chicago. The city's a real place too. One of the interesting things about the city, Hattiesville, Mississippi, didn't have a movie theater. And so they, like in 2025, and so they were able to bring a screening of Sinners there. Um, Let's see. Dr. Sweeney asks, what do you think is the significance of showing children going into Annie's place? I seem to recall they left out the back. Dr. White has something to say. Your eyebrows rose. That's why. See, this is what happens when you know people. She's like, I've got thoughts. Spotlight.
It did demonstrate, like thinking about narrative motivation and causality. It did demonstrate like that she took the plantation dollars from the children and give an opportunity to like bring up for the first time that idea of like um, you know, the money that Smoke and Stack want versus the money that the community has. And so another kind of bridging moment, I guess, between the different communities.
I think too, I mean, the children, are obviously running errands for their parents. Like they're their mom particularly. She's like, this is for your mom. We don't know if something was ailing the mother or something was going on, but she tells them, don't sell this on the way because I don't want your mom coming back crazy, right? Like, doing crazy things to me. So obviously the children, are a part of this whole kind of network of community. And in the Black community, you got the candy lady or something like that. You run up to the store, for mom and dad, like go up the store, tell Miss so and so, I need this, and you bring the money. And so I think it was her connection in the community. I think it shows her as a staple in the community, right? Like that everybody knows Miss Annie, that everybody respects her, that she is a significant part of the community, and also the healer to me. Just
And for me, the potential for extended kinship networks, like if anything were to happen to that little girl's mom, she would know that she could go to Miss Annie to be taken care of, not as a maternal figure, not a mammy type figure, right? And I do think that there's a distinction to be had there. But this idea that she's all these things, she's a healer, she's a candy lady, she's a storehouse, but also well respected. There's a comment. I think the same about Mary. She actually did care about Annie, but under Remick's control, it looks malicious. She said she was actually, sorry, this is Mikkel. She said she was actually distraught about Annie's death. That grief was real, but it was probably really hard to determine that on the first watch. Yeah, absolutely. Other comments? I don't see any additional comments that we haven't addressed.
Does anyone else have favorite scenes that we haven't talked about? Yep, there comes one.
Oh, yes. Emma says, my favorite scene was the makeshift baptism in the lake with Remick and Sammy. Can you talk about how you interpreted the scene, especially how Remick talked of the colonization of Ireland with Christianity? We're all trying to see who's going to speak first because we have so much to say. I feel like I've been talking a lot, y'all. A lot.
I'll jump in. This is like, so when we think about like colonialism and particularly, not necessarily, and Emma is in my class and we read A Modest Proposal. So I feel like maybe I have to talk about the historical aspect of the Catholics versus the Protestants, of the Irish Catholics and then the English Protestant. It plays out within that particular context. But what I thought was really interesting in terms of how he was talking about the religion, it brought me back to, let's say, within the context of African post-colonialism and colonialism, and the ways in which Christianity was also considered to be one way of oppression against the African indigenous, not only in terms of imposing a new religion. So with the new religion comes the new worldview, the new language, a new culture. And to a certain extent, that's the parallel that I saw between the ways in which, as Irish, and being persecuted because of your religion to a certain extent, and having the religion being imposed on you. It's almost like the same parallel that I see within an African context. So when he talked about it, like, it resonated with me in that sense. But I'm pretty sure you know the historical aspect of the context between Irish and British people. We talked about it in class.
Yeah, and I'll add that I love that scene because, baptism is, a sort of death and rebirth that's at the same time. And for me, I love it for multiple reasons. One, because Sammy's prayer, I'm not saying that it's not genuine, but he wanted something else, right? He could quote the Bible. He didn't need to look at the Bible to quote scripture. And so the prayer is ineffective. And I've been saying this for the past 2 nights. There's the adage, when you pray, move your feet. So your prayers are great, but they're not enough. You have to do work. And it's not until he connects his hand to the guitar, which I said is a freedom technology, and then uses uses it as a weapon. It becomes the weapon. That's the thing that sets him free. It's not that the prayer itself was a problem, but it's not connected to who he literally is. And so if we think about that guitar as an extension of his voice, the thing that can literally call power, when the two are connected, that's what's important for me. And I think also, he doesn't really, he doesn't get close to it until he's been dunked in the water 3 times. And so he's had to die to that old self, whatever that old way of thinking. And then he's birthed anew. And he was like, all right, I've got to survive. The prayer ain't working. I've been, you die and you get reborn. And for me, I think in that moment is when he knows if he gets out of this, he's never letting go of that guitar. I mean, we see him, his dad is like, let go of the guitar. And he's sitting there holding on to it because this guitar helped defeat in that, what we like and call in horror, the final stand. It really does deliver. It doesn't deliver the final blow, but it delivers the incapacitating blow to Remick, and then Smoke is able to come and stake him through the heart, so they together kill him. And so that's what that means for me. This combination of this freedom technology, the stepping into who you are, your voice, your power, and then using a prayer that I want to call effective, right? Because I don't believe, Sammy said, I lied to you. I love the blues. And so the blues is in that guitar, and that's what helped save him.
Yeah, that's his religion. The blues is his religion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it goes back to Delta Slim saying, this blues wasn't forced on us like that religion. So
It came with us. It came with us.
us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let's see, we have one more comment. One of my favorite scenes is the first traveling with Sammy and Stack and the guitar, because I believe that was one of those forms of subtle foreshadowing. When they talk about riding back, or in terms of traveling, like through the journey that the movie takes us through, the movie that Sammy goes through. Well, it is 7:30. Panelists, do you have any last things you want to say? Any takeaways you want to offer our guests before we wrap it up?
No, this was a pleasure. It was fun for me. So thank you all for being here.
Yes, it was fun for me because, the past 2 nights we've been just like talking to the students, and I'm like, oh my God, but I want to talk too, listening to students talk. So thank you so much, Dr. Wayne, Dr. White, Dr. Conkle, for joining us. Thank you all for being here tonight. Again, thank you to the Department of English, Center for Africana Studies, and the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Center for allowing these events this week to be possible. So yeah, thank you so much. Y'all were great. Have a good night.
Everybody can go watch it for a 4th time now.
Yes. Bye, y'all.